Emperor stood before the massive viewing window of his palace, looking out at the sprawling city below. The golden spires stretched as far as his eyes could see, each one reaching toward the stars like fingers grasping for more worlds to conquer. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and every day brought news of new victories. The Emperor's skin was pale blue, almost translucent, with dark veins visible beneath the surface. His 4 arms moved gracefully as he reviewed the daily reports on his crystal tablet. Each gesture was precise and calculated, just like everything else in his empire. The had perfected the art of conquest long ago. "Your Majesty," came a voice from behind him. General approached with careful steps, his military boots clicking on the polished floor. The general's uniform was pristine white with silver trim, and medals covered his chest like stars in the night sky. "What news do you bring?" the emperor asked without turning around. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. When he spoke, entire star systems listened. "The Outer Rim survey is complete, Your Majesty. We have identified 47 new worlds suitable for integration." Held up a data pad showing colorful star charts. Red dots marked conquered worlds, while yellow ones showed targets for future expansion. The emperor finally turned, his large black eyes focusing on the general. "Any resistance expected?" "Minor, Your Majesty. Most species in the Outer Rim are primitive. They lack proper technology and military organization. The survey teams report that integration should proceed smoothly." Nodded slowly. This was how it always went. The Empire's scouts would find new worlds, study the inhabitants, and then the integration fleets would arrive. Some species surrendered immediately when they saw the massive warships. Others tried to resist but quickly learned that fighting the Empire was hopeless. "There is one species of particular interest," continued, scrolling through his data. "They call themselves humans. They inhabit a system called Sol, about 3 months' travel from our nearest outpost." "Tell me about them." The emperor moved to his throne, a magnificent structure carved from a single crystal that seemed to glow with inner light. As he sat, the crystal resonated with his psychic energy, amplifying his natural abilities. "They are bipedal mammals, Your Majesty. Average height about 2 meters. They have only 2 arms, which is quite primitive. No natural psychic abilities detected. Their technology level is approximately 800 years behind our current standards." The emperor raised one of his 4 hands. 800 years, that is significant. "Yes, Your Majesty. They have only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their ships are crude metal constructions powered by chemical reactions and primitive fusion reactors. They use projectile weapons instead of energy beams. Most amusing, they still engage in tribal conflicts among themselves." Almost smiled at this. Species that fought each other were always the easiest to conquer. The Empire had learned long ago to exploit such divisions. Offer one faction an advantage over their enemies, and they would often welcome rule. Population numbers. Approximately 8 billion on their home world, with small colonies on nearby planets and moons. They breed quickly, which could make them useful for labor once integrated. The emperor stood and walked to a different window, this one showing the vast military complex where the Empire's fleets were built and maintained. Hundreds of ships moved through the orbital yards like silver fish in an endless sea. Some were as small as shuttles, others were massive dreadnoughts capable of destroying entire planets. "Assign the task to Admiral Ev," decided. "A standard integration should suffice. Take the 47th Fleet." "The entire fleet, Your Majesty, for such a primitive species." The Emperor's black eyes fixed on his general. "I do not tolerate questions about my orders." Straightened immediately. "Of course, Your Majesty, forgive my presumption." "The 47th Fleet will serve as a demonstration. When other species in the Outer Rim see what happens to those who resist, they will be more cooperative." The Emperor returned to his throne. How long before the fleet can depart? Admiral Eth's ships are currently resupplying after the campaign. They could be ready within one standard week. Excellent. Inform the Admiral that I expect this integration to proceed without complications. The humans will surrender or be destroyed. There are no other options. Bow deeply. It shall be done, Your Majesty. As the general left, Emperor activated his personal communication system. A holographic display appeared showing the locations of all Imperial fleets throughout the galaxy. Thousands of ships were spread across hundreds of star systems, maintaining order and expanding the Empire's reach. The humans were just another entry on a very long list. In 3,000 years, the Empire had encountered countless species. Some had advanced technology, others had powerful militaries, and a few had even possessed limited psychic abilities. All had fallen before superiority. The Emperor touched a control, and detailed files on humanity appeared before him. The scout reports contained extensive information about human society, technology, and military capabilities. Everything confirmed what General had said. These creatures were primitives who had barely crawled out of their own solar system. Their warships were laughably crude, built like flying metal boxes with weapons bolted to the sides. They still used explosive projectiles instead of energy weapons. Their faster-than-light travel was slow and inefficient, requiring massive engines that took up half their ship's space. Most telling of all, they had no unified government. The humans were divided into dozens of separate nations, each with its own military and agenda. Such divisions would make conquest trivial. The Empire would simply offer better terms to whichever human faction was willing to cooperate. Within months, humans would be fighting humans while forces watched from orbit. It was a pattern the Empire had used successfully thousands of times before. Emperor dismissed the holographic display and settled back into his crystal throne. Soon, the outer rim would be fully integrated, and the Empire would be ready to push even deeper into unexplored space. There were always new worlds to conquer, new species to integrate, and new resources to exploit. The humans would learn, just as everyone else had learned, that resistance to the Empire was futile. Their primitive weapons and divided loyalties would crumble before superior technology and unified purpose. In a few months, human children would be learning history in Imperial schools, and human workers would be building ships for the Imperial fleet. It was simply the natural order of things. Admiral Eth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Righteous Conquest, watching the primitive solar system grow larger on his main screen. The journey from space had taken exactly 3 months, just as the scouts had predicted. His 47th fleet consisted of 1 massive dreadnought, 12 heavy cruisers, and 30 escort ships. It was enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. The human home world appeared as a blue and green marble hanging in the darkness. Eth had seen thousands of such worlds during his long career. They all looked peaceful and beautiful from space, but that peaceful appearance always changed once the integration began. "Sir, we are detecting multiple artificial structures throughout the system," reported his sensor officer, a young with nervous energy. "The humans have built stations around most of their planets and moons." Eth nodded without surprise. Even primitive species usually managed some basic space construction. Any military vessels? "Several small ships near their home world, sir. The largest appears to be approximately 200 meters in length. Our intelligence reports indicate they call them destroyers." The Admiral almost laughed. 200 meters was barely larger than a shuttle. His own flagship measured over 3 kilometers from bow to stern and carried enough weapons to level a continent. "Take us to standard integration position," Eth ordered. 1 million kilometers from their primary planet. Activate all weapon systems but do not target anything yet. We want them to see our strength but not feel immediately threatened. The massive fleet moved into formation around Earth like predators circling prey. Every ship bristled with energy weapons that glowed with barely contained power. The sight should have been enough to make any rational species immediately surrender. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human home world," announced the communications officer. "Put it on screen." The main display flickered, then showed the interior of what appeared to be a primitive command center. The human who appeared was wearing a dark blue uniform with various symbols and decorations. His hair was gray, and his face showed the lines of age and experience. Behind him, other humans worked at crude computer terminals. "This is Admiral of the Terran Defense Forces," the human said in a calm voice. The translation system easily converted his words to, "You are in our space without permission. State your intentions." Eth straightened in his command chair. The human's tone was completely wrong. There should have been fear, awe, or at least respect when faced with superior force. Instead, this admiral sounded almost bored. "I am Admiral Eth of the Empire. You will surrender your system immediately and prepare for peaceful integration into the Empire. Resistance is futile and will result in the destruction of your species." Admiral listened to the translation, then looked at someone off-screen. A moment later, he turned back to the camera with what appeared to be amusement on his face. "That's very funny," he said. "Thanks for the advance warning. You might want to bring more ships next time." The transmission ended. Eth stared at the blank screen in shock. In 300 years of service, no species had ever responded to an integration demand with laughter. They begged, they threatened, they tried to negotiate, but they never laughed. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his tactical officer. Before Eth could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. "Sir," shouted the sensor officer, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system, multiple contacts materializing from unknown faster-than-light method." The main screen shifted to tactical display, showing the positions of all ships in the system. Red dots began appearing everywhere as human vessels emerged from what seemed like empty space. They weren't coming through the normal hyperspace lanes that all civilized species used. These ships were appearing directly out of nothing, as if they had been hiding in dimensions that didn't even know existed. "How many?" Eth demanded. "Still counting, sir. At least 200 ships, and the number is growing. They're surrounding our formation." The admiral felt cold fear creeping up his spine. The intelligence reports had said the humans only possessed a few dozen military vessels. Where had all these ships come from? "Sir, incoming transmission from the human admiral." Appeared on screen again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood other humans in different uniforms, representing what appeared to be multiple military organizations. Their faces were grim and determined. "Admiral Eth said, you have exactly 30 minutes to leave our system. Any ship remaining after that time will be destroyed. This is your only warning." "You cannot threaten the Empire," Eth shouted. "We have conquered thousands of worlds. Your primitive weapons are no match for Imperial technology." His expression didn't change. 30 minutes, he repeated, and the transmission ended. Eth turned to his weapons officer. "Target their largest ships. Show them what real firepower looks like." The Righteous Conquest's main cannons swiveled toward a cluster of human vessels. Energy began building in the massive weapon systems, creating a visible glow along the ship's hull. The targeting computers locked onto 3 human ships that appeared to be heavy cruisers. "Firing," announced the weapons officer. Brilliant beams of concentrated energy lanced out from the flagship, capable of punching through any known armor. The beams struck the human ships directly, creating massive explosions that lit up the darkness of space. When the light faded, Eth expected to see debris and wreckage. Instead, the human ships were still there, their hulls glowing red-hot but intact. Primitive-looking turrets along their sides began rotating toward the fleet. "Sir, they're returning fire." The human weapons weren't elegant energy beams. They were crude projectiles, chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic forces. The projectiles struck shields with tremendous impact, causing the energy barriers to flicker and fail. "Impossible," Eth whispered. "Their technology is centuries behind ours." But the evidence was right there on his screens. Human kinetic weapons were punching through defenses like they were made of paper. The primitive metal slugs hit with such force that they actually penetrated the advanced armor plating of Imperial warships. "Sir, we're losing the escort ships Thunder's Edge and Swift Retribution. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 15 of the Relentless." Eth watched in horror as his carefully organized fleet began taking serious damage. The human ships moved with surprising coordination, concentrating their fire on individual vessels and destroying them one by one. The worst part was how efficiently they fought. The humans didn't waste ammunition or energy. Every shot was calculated for maximum effect. They targeted specific systems on ships, crippling engines or weapons rather than simply trying to destroy everything. "Sir, recommend immediate withdrawal," urged his tactical officer. "We're outnumbered and taking heavy casualties." The admiral's pride warred with his survival instincts. The Empire didn't retreat from primitives, but his empire also didn't usually lose ships to species that barely understood faster-than-light travel. Another escort ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, then another. All ships emergency jumped to hyperspace, full retreat. The surviving vessels activated their faster-than-light drives and fled the system, leaving behind 6 destroyed ships and the wreckage of their certainty. As the stars stretched into lines around him, Admiral Eth composed his report to Emperor. The humans weren't primitive. They were something else entirely. Something dangerous. Emperor read Admiral Eth's report for the 3rd time, his 4 hands gripping the crystal tablet with increasing force. The delicate device began to crack under the pressure of his anger. 6 ships lost to primitives. It was unthinkable. It was impossible, yet the evidence was there in stark detail. "Bring me Grand Admiral Or," the Emperor commanded. Within minutes, the Empire's most experienced military commander stood before the Crystal Throne, or had served for over 200 years and had never lost a single campaign. His face and missing left arm to battles fought across a dozen star systems. If anyone could restore the Empire's honor, it would be him. "Your Majesty," Or said with a deep bow, "I have reviewed Admiral Eth's report. The humans appear to possess more advanced technology than our scouts detected." "More advanced?" His voice carried deadly calm. "They are primitives, crude tool users who have barely escaped their own planet. Explain to me how such creatures defeated Imperial warships." "Kinetic weapons, Your Majesty. Incredibly powerful ones. Our shields are designed to deflect energy beams, not solid projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. It appears the humans have developed technology far beyond what we expected." The Emperor stood and walked to his viewing window. Below, construction crews worked around the clock building new ships for the Imperial fleet. The defeat at Sol had shocked the entire Empire. Subject species throughout space were watching to see how their masters would respond. "What do you recommend?" "Overwhelming force, Your Majesty. Not a single fleet, but multiple battle groups attacking simultaneously. The humans may have surprised Admiral Eth, but they cannot stand against the combined might of 3 full fleets." Nodded slowly. "You will take personal command. Bring the 3rd, 8th, and 12th battle groups. 400 ships should be sufficient to crush these upstart mammals." "It shall be done, Your Majesty. The humans will learn what happens when primitives challenge the Empire." 6 weeks later, Grand Admiral Or's massive armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The sight before them made even the veteran commander pause in surprise. The human solar system had been transformed into a fortress. Where once there had been empty space between planets, now massive orbital platforms floated like metal moons. Asteroid belts had been converted into defensive networks bristling with weapons. Even the small moons around the giant planets had been turned into military bases. "Sir," reported the sensor officer aboard Or's flagship, Eternal Dominance, "I'm detecting over 3,000 defensive installations throughout the system, and sir, there are ships, thousands of them." The tactical display lit up like a constellation of angry stars. Human vessels filled the space around every planet and major moon. Some were clearly military ships, sleek and dangerous looking. Others appeared to be converted civilian craft, their hulls modified to carry weapons and armor. "How is this possible?" Or muttered. "6 weeks ago they had maybe 50 military ships, now they have thousands." "Sir, incoming transmission from the human." Admiral appeared on the main screen, but he wasn't alone this time. Behind him stood representatives wearing different uniforms and insignia. Some wore the blue of naval forces, others the green of ground armies, still others wore uniforms or didn't recognize. "Welcome back," said with the same calm tone that had infuriated Admiral Ev. "I see you brought friends." "I am Grand Admiral or of the Empire. You will surrender immediately or face complete annihilation. This is your final warning." Turned to speak with someone off-screen for a moment, then looked back at the camera. "Grand Admiral, I have a message for you from the President of the United Earth Government." A new human appeared on screen, an older woman wearing formal civilian clothing. Her voice carried absolute authority as she spoke. "Grand Admiral Orr, 6 weeks ago your empire made a terrible mistake. You threatened our children, you demanded our surrender, you tried to destroy our ships." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, the human race stands united for the first time in our history. Every nation, every military force, every civilian with the skills to help has joined together for one purpose." The woman's eyes seemed to look directly at or through the screen. "We're going to teach you why threatening humanity was the worst decision your empire ever made." The transmission ended. Or stared at the blank screen, feeling an unfamiliar emotion creeping through his mind. For the first time in his long military career, he felt uncertain. The humans spoke with confidence that seemed completely at odds with their inferior numbers and technology. "Sir, the human fleets are moving into attack formation," reported his tactical officer. The Grand Admiral watched as thousands of human ships began flowing toward his position like a tide of metal and death. Their movements were coordinated with precision that impressed even his experienced eye. Someone with real tactical genius was commanding the human forces. "All ships battle stations. Primary targets are the orbital platforms. Secondary targets are military vessels. Ignore converted civilian craft unless they pose direct threat." The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their energy shields glowing with power. 3 battle groups represented the finest military technology in the galaxy. No force should have been able to stand against them. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a newborn star. Energy beams lanced out toward human positions, striking shields and armor with tremendous force. But the human defensive platforms were built differently than their ships. They were designed to absorb incredible amounts of damage and keep fighting. When the humans returned fire, the results were devastating. Their kinetic weapons had been upgraded since the first battle. The projectiles moved faster and hit harder than before. More importantly, the humans had learned to coordinate their fire with deadly efficiency. "Sir, we're taking heavy damage to the forward battle line," reported his damage control officer. "The humans are concentrating fire on individual ships, overwhelming our shields through sheer volume." Or watched his tactical display with growing alarm. Red indicators showed damaged and destroyed ships throughout his fleet. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. "How are they doing this? Our technology is superior in every way." "Sir," interrupted his sensor officer, "I'm detecting something unusual about the human weapons. They appear to be using our own shield frequency data to calibrate their targeting systems. They know exactly how to penetrate our defenses." The Grand Admiral felt cold realization wash over him. They're learning from our previous attack. They studied the wreckage of Admiral Eth's ships. It was brilliant and terrifying. The humans had taken technology and figured out how to counter it in just 6 weeks. They had turned the Empire's own superiority against them. "Sir, urgent message from Captain of the Crushing Victory. His ship is surrounded and taking critical damage. He requests permission to activate self-destruct to avoid capture. Order all ships to begin fighting withdrawal. We need to preserve what forces we can." But the humans weren't content to simply drive off the invaders. As the fleet began to retreat, human ships pursued them with relentless determination. The running battle continued for hours as the surviving Imperial vessels tried to reach the hyperspace jump point. When Grand Admiral Orr finally escaped the Sol system, he had lost over 150 ships. Nearly half his fleet was gone, destroyed or captured by creatures the Empire had dismissed as primitives. As the stars stretched around his damaged flagship or composed his report to Emperor, the words came slowly, each one harder to write than the last. The humans weren't just dangerous, they were learning, and they were angry. Emperor stood in the war room deep beneath his palace, surrounded by holographic displays showing the Empire's military strength. The numbers should have been reassuring. 3,000 warships remained in active service, spread across dozens of star systems. Yet after reading Grand Admiral Orr's report, those numbers felt smaller than they ever had before. "Gather the full Imperial Navy," commanded the assembled admirals. "Every ship, every crew, every weapon we possess. These humans have humiliated the Empire twice. There will not be a third time." Fleet Admiral, the Empire's supreme naval commander, stepped forward. His ancient face bore the scars of 100 campaigns, and his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Your Majesty, surely the entire Imperial Navy is unnecessary for a single primitive system." "These primitives destroyed half of Orr's fleet," the Emperor replied coldly. "They have technology our scouts never detected. They fight with coordination our tactical computers cannot predict. I will not underestimate them again." The mobilization took 3 months. Ships were recalled from the farthest reaches of Imperial space. Ancient dreadnoughts that had been mothballed for centuries were brought back into service. The greatest armada in galactic history assembled in the home system, ready to crush the human threat once and for all. When the massive fleet arrived at Sol, Fleet Admiral expected to find the system even more heavily fortified than before. Instead, his sensors showed something impossible. The Sol system was empty. Planets remained in their orbits, but every human military installation, every ship, every sign of organized resistance had simply vanished. "Where are they?" muttered, staring at the tactical display aboard his flagship, the undaunted Sovereign. 3,000 ships cannot simply disappear. His communications officer looked up from her console with confusion. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the third planet. It appears to be coming from a civilian communication satellite." "Put it through." Admiral appeared on screen, but something was different about him. He looked older, more tired, but also more determined. Behind him, could see what appeared to be a simple office rather than a military command center. Fleet Admiral said, reading from a prepared statement, "By the time you see this message, the Terran Defense Forces have already departed the Sol system. We thank you for giving us time to prepare." The message continued as felt growing unease. "Your empire made a critical error in judgment. You assumed that because we defended our home, we would remain here to be destroyed. You thought like conquerors. We thought like survivors." looked directly at the camera with eyes that held no fear, only cold calculation. While you gathered your fleets, we built new ships. While you planned our destruction, we studied your technology. While you prepared to attack our home, we identified your weaknesses. The transmission paused as seemed to listen to something off-screen. When he looked back, there was something that might have been sympathy in his expression. Fleet Admiral, in approximately 30 minutes, you will begin receiving reports from your outlying territories. I suggest you prepare your communication systems for heavy traffic. Earth sends her regards. The message ended. For exactly 27 minutes, the Sol system remained quiet. Used the time to deploy his ships in standard formation around the empty human worlds, preparing for siege operations that suddenly seemed pointless. Then the reports started coming in. "Sir," called the communications officer, "priority message from Admiral N at the shipyards. He reports human ships attacking the facility. Massive fleet, unknown origin." Before could respond, another message arrived. Then another. Within minutes, his communications board was lit up with emergency transmissions from across the Empire. Human fleets were attacking everywhere at once. "This is impossible," whispered reading report after report. "There are attacks at Prime, the mining worlds, the Hesperia research station. That's 12 separate star systems under simultaneous assault." His tactical officer was frantically working at his console, trying to track all the incoming data. "Sir, the attack patterns are coordinated. They're hitting our shipyards, supply depots, and communication hubs. They're not trying to conquer territory, they're crippling our ability to wage war." More reports flooded in. The humans weren't fighting like any species the Empire had ever encountered. They struck with precision and overwhelming force, destroyed their targets completely, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They moved through space using the same mysterious faster-than-light technology that had surprised Admiral Eth months earlier. "Sir, urgent message from the home system." Emperor appeared on screen, his 4 arms gesturing wildly. Behind him, the throne room was filled with panicking advisors and military staff. "Human ships have appeared throughout our home system. They're attacking the orbital shipyards and defense platforms." The fleet admiral felt his world spinning out of control. "Your Majesty, how many ships?" "We count over 400 vessels. Our home fleet is engaging, but they're using weapons and tactics we've never seen before. Their ships are incorporating our own technology, but improved. Their kinetic weapons are more powerful than anything in our arsenal." Another communication cut in from Admiral N at the yards. His image showed an officer with panic in his large black eyes. "Fleet Admiral, the human ships here are using our own communication frequencies to coordinate their attacks. They're jamming our transmissions while maintaining perfect coordination among their forces. It's like they know our systems better than we do." Finally understood the trap they had fallen into. While the Empire had focused on gathering ships to attack Sol, the humans had studied captured technology and built new fleets of their own. They had learned to use Imperial faster-than-light travel, Imperial communication systems, even Imperial tactical databases. The humans hadn't been preparing to defend their home system. They had been preparing to attack the Empire itself. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures appearing around us, multiple contacts materializing from hyperspace." The tactical display lit up as human ships began appearing around the massive fleet. But these weren't the crude vessels that Admiral Eth had encountered. These ships were sleek and deadly, incorporating the best of both human and technology. They moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of months of planning. Admiral's voice came over the communication system, transmitted from one of the approaching human ships. "Fleet Admiral, you came here to destroy our home. Instead, you left your own home defenseless. While you gathered your ships in empty space, We liberated your shipyards, freed your slave worlds, and captured your supply bases. The human fleet surrounding Armada was enormous, nearly matching the Imperial forces in number. But these ships were crewed by humans who fought for their freedom, while his crews fought for an empire that had just learned it was not invincible. We offer you one chance to surrender, continued. Your empire is finished. Your emperor is trapped in his own system by our fleets. Your shipyards are destroyed, your supply lines are cut, and your subject species are rebelling throughout your territory. Looked at his tactical display, seeing the impossible made real. The greatest empire in galactic history was crumbling, brought down by creatures they had dismissed as primitives. You have 10 minutes to decide, Admiral concluded. Choose wisely. As human weapons began charging around them, Fleet Admiral realized that the Empire's 3,000-year reign was over. The humans had won not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through something the Empire had forgotten how to do. They had learned to adapt. The surrender came not with fanfare or ceremony, but with the quiet clicking of communication keys as Fleet Admiral transmitted the Imperial fleet's unconditional capitulation. Around him in the Sol system, 3,000 warships powered down their weapons and shields, their crews sitting in stunned silence as they processed what had just happened. The greatest empire in galactic history had fallen to a species that had possessed faster-than-light travel for less than 50 years. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Terran vessel Defiance, watching the massive fleet surrender through the viewing ports. His staff worked efficiently around him, coordinating with human forces throughout what had been Imperial space. The operation they had planned for months was proceeding exactly as designed. Admiral, reported his communications officer, we're receiving surrender transmissions from forces in 17 star systems. The rebellion leaders on former Imperial worlds are confirming that local garrisons have laid down their arms. Nodded, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. The war was over, but now came the harder task of building peace. Any word from Emperor? Yes, sir. His personal surrender was transmitted 20 minutes ago. The Emperor has agreed to all terms of the Integration Accords. The Integration Accords almost smiled at the name. It was Admiral from the European Federation who had suggested using the Empire's own terminology for their conquest plans. The irony seemed appropriate. On the main screen, could see ships beginning to move into formation under human escort. The most dangerous vessels were being directed towards secure facilities where their weapons would be removed and their crews processed. The Empire's technology would be studied and selectively integrated into human systems. Sir, incoming transmission from the flagship. Fleet Admiral appeared on screen, his 4 arms hanging at his sides in a gesture of complete defeat. The proud military leader who had commanded the Empire's greatest armada now looked like what he was, a prisoner of war. Admiral said quietly, I request permission to address my fleet. Granted, but the transmission will be monitored and recorded. Nodded his understanding. A moment later, his image was broadcast to every ship in the system. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of Imperial history coming to an end. Warriors of the Empire, he began. Today we have learned that strength is not measured by the size of one's fleet or the power of one's weapons. The humans have shown us that true strength comes from unity, adaptability, and the will to protect what matters most. The Admiral looked directly into the camera, speaking not just to his fleet but to history itself. For 3, our empire ruled through fear and superior technology. We believed that our way was the only way, that our civilization was the peak of galactic evolution. The humans have proven us wrong. Watched the transmission with respect for his former enemy, was conducting himself with dignity even in defeat. The humans did not defeat us through cruelty or domination, continued. They defeated us by becoming better than us. In 6 months, they learned everything we knew and improved upon it. They united their entire species for a common cause while we remained divided by pride and tradition. The fleet admiral paused, gathering himself for his final words as a free officer. To the humans who now command us, I offer the loyalty of my crews and the knowledge of my experience. To my fellow, I say this: we have the opportunity to learn from a superior civilization. Use it wisely. The transmission ended. Throughout the human fleet, officers and crew members watched there in respectful silence. They had won the war, but they understood the magnitude of what had just occurred. An entire galactic civilization had just acknowledged their defeat and accepted human leadership. "Admiral," came a voice from his communication panel. "Priority transmission from Earth. President Martinez wishes to speak with you." The President of the United Earth Government appeared on a secure channel, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. Behind her, could see the flags of every nation on Earth hanging in the reorganized United Nations Assembly Hall. "Admiral, congratulations on a flawless operation. What's the status of Imperial forces galaxy-wide?" "Madam President, we have confirmed surrender from Imperial forces in 43 star systems. Resistance has collapsed everywhere except for 3 remote outposts that haven't received word yet. Total military casualties are approximately 18,000. Human casualties are under 500. The numbers told the story of how completely the humans had outfought their enemies. Superior planning, better intelligence, and coordinated strikes had allowed them to cripple an entire galactic empire with minimal bloodshed. And the liberated worlds. Celebrations are ongoing in every system we've reached. Species that had been under imperial rule for centuries are declaring independence and requesting to join the Terran Commonwealth. They want to establish a mutual defense pact. They are offering to share their industrial technology. President Martinez nodded slowly. "Admiral, you and your forces have accomplished something unprecedented. In 6 months, humanity has gone from a single star system to the dominant power in our galaxy. But now we face an even greater challenge." Understood exactly what she meant. Governing an empire is harder than conquering one. Precisely. The ruled through fear and force. We need to build something better, something based on cooperation and mutual benefit. The Commonwealth Charter is ready for implementation, Madam President. We've already begun establishing local governments on liberated worlds. The former imperial species are eager to participate. On tactical display, updates continued flowing in from across what had been space. Human ships were arriving at distant worlds, bringing not conquest but liberation. Species that had been enslaved for generations were being offered freedom, technology, and membership in a growing interstellar community based on cooperation rather than domination. "Admiral," President Martinez continued, "I have one final order for you. When you return to Earth, you and your staff will be promoted and honored for what you've accomplished. But more importantly, you're going to help us figure out how to keep this new galaxy we've inherited from falling apart." Understood, Madam President, though I have to ask, what do we do with Emperor and the leadership? They'll be given the same choice as everyone else. Join the Commonwealth as equals, contribute to the common good, and help build something better than the empire they ruled. If they choose cooperation over domination, they'll have a place in our new galactic community. Looked out at the fleet surrounding his ship. Thousands of beings who had thought themselves the masters of the galaxy were now discovering what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Emperor. He's requesting a formal meeting to discuss the integration of worlds into the Commonwealth." Smiled for the first time in months. "Tell His former Majesty that we'd be honored to meet with him, but he comes as a citizen now, not an emperor." As the Defiance began its journey toward the reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been a minor species confined to a single star system. Today, they were the leaders of a galactic community that would reshape civilization itself. The Empire had made one critical mistake when they threatened humanity. They had assumed that a species' current limitations defined their ultimate potential. They had seen humans as they were, not as what they could become when everything they cared about was at stake. The galaxy would never make that mistake again.